Hey guys, have another Shirogorov knife for you today. This one is the Dmitry Sinkevich collaboration for the year 2021, the Kami Flipper, which is based on Dmitry's full custom Kami Flipper with very little design changes compared to the versions that he has that were available for auction recently. Now, to say that these are collab, I think is a little bit incorrect. Compare this to the recent RJ Martin collaboration or the Hokkaido collaboration that came before it with John Barker. And you can see that these are more of Shirogorov production knives. You know, Dmitry comes up with these designs and Shirogorov then makes a version of it that is very, very faithful to the original design and just does it in a larger run. Dmitry is pretty much just one person. He doesn't have the capability to create 300 of these knives. So he then goes and talks to Sergey, and they do a production run of them. Again, this and many other recent collaborations have been in a number of 300, and this one is no different. And so you really get the full design as it was intended by Dmitry in these Shirogorov collaborations, which I think is really nice. When I first saw the Kami Flipper by Dmitry, I was taken aback by so many new and interesting features. This knife handle design obviously was inspired by the design that Dmitry used with his collaboration with Rockstead, the Shun. And overall, the size and shape of the knife and the blade shape with the kind of, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of like a Santoku with this wide sloping belly here, is very reminiscent of what you see on the Cannabis. So, we have the original Cannabis, the mini Cannabis, which is all titanium, and now you have this Kami Flipper, which in my head I kind of think of it as the Cannabis 3.0, but it really has those lines that are I think very heavily inspired by the original Cannabis knife, which is a really good thing. The Cannabis is one of my favorite designs from Dmitry. So let's go ahead and take a look at the overalls of the knife. Now, this knife, a lot of people were thinking that it was in the same size realm or in between the size of an F95 and a Neon. I think it's actually closer to the Neon size, and we'll see here. If we take a look, the overall cutting edge you're getting here is just a tad over 3.5 inches with an overall length of, I want to say just exactly 8 inches here. And let's go ahead and weigh it. And you'll see that this knife is 98.3 grams, which should be, let's see here, just under 3.5 ounces. Now, comparing the size to other familiar knives, we have the Kami here, the Neon, and let me line these up right here, and an F95. So I'll actually line them up on the pivot actually, so we can get these to match. As you can see here, the Kami is very much in the same size realm as the Neon, and not much larger. The knife looks larger when it's not next to a Neon. Neon Zero, by the way. This Neon Hard is basically the same design as a Neon Zero. It really is pretty much exactly the same overall length as the Neon, but I think this the handle design, how it kind of curves but doesn't kind of taper off the way the Neon does, makes it appear larger in the Neon than the Neon. And actually, when holding in the hand, I also tend to agree. If I didn't have a Neon Zero next to me to compare and I had it in my hand, I would have also assumed as well that it is larger than the Neon. One thing I haven't actually taken a look at is how the knives compare when they're actually just closed. And as you can see here, the Kami, I guess, is just millimeters longer. I mean, just not really much of a difference at all. But there is a very significant difference in the hand, which I'll talk about later on. So let's first take a look at the blade here. This blade is very polarizing for many people. This blade shape and grind here, it's not the first time that we've seen Dmitry do something like this. The Techno Bamboo 2, which is the second iteration of the Techno Bamboo, I believe it's a larger, has a lanyard hole, and has this grind here, which is an asymmetrical grind, very close to a chisel here. If you take a look at the profile, you can see that this the primary bevel on the right side is not very steep at all. But when you take a look at the right side here, right side here, you can see that this secondary bevel goes up quite high. Sergey has a similar grind to this on a couple of his older full customs that is symmetrical. He calls it a complex grind. As you can see here, the grinds don't completely go off. They have two different separate plunges here. But another interesting thing to note is that there's very tall secondary bevel on the left side of the knife here. Something that's much larger than what you see on most other Shirogorov knives. Most other Shirogorov knives are something like this, where you have a very thin secondary bevel. What this looks to me to be is much less obtuse angle here on the cutting edge, and that combined with the chisel-like grind makes this knife excellent at slicing. And in fact, here, if you take a look at the right side, you can see that there actually isn't a secondary, besides this bevel right here, there isn't a secondary bevel on the edge. It does catch the light in a way that makes me think that they perhaps might have put some kind of micro bevel on it, but I'm not especially sure. And, all this edge and sharpening stuff isn't quite my forte, so I can't really speak too much on it. But do know that the secondary bevel here is quite large, and that very acute angle combined with the kind of chisel-like grind makes this knife excellent at slicing. Another really nice thing to note is these wide satin flats. It's very, very, very well executed, and these collaborations that we're seeing of recent, having these wide flats is atypical of Shirogorov. Most of my knives here have stuff going on the flats, but you can see here the flats here are usually nothing to write home about on most of Sergey's designs. So seeing these wide flats is really nice, because I think Shirogorov does a very excellent job in their satin execution. I think perhaps some people say it's a little too perfect, that it looks unnatural how straight the lines are, but it really catches the light, and I really do appreciate that. These swedges here are massive, very Sinkevich, and really adds to the flow of the design of the knife, I think. As you can see here, the way the swedge meets up with the top of the handle here is really nice. Going back and taking a look at the jimping, you can see this jimping is quite functional and is actually angled here. And you can also see at the end, we have a transition where the last kind of dip in the jimping right here comes up quite a bit and then starts to form the spine of the blade here. It also intersects with the swedge and where it starts. So really nice design, and it's actually quite functional in the hand. You can definitely feel that spot here, and it gives you a really nice index point while you're using the knife. Now the blade steel on this is S110V, and it is marked right here on the pivot area, like many other Sinkevich collaborations. I think Dmitry is actually doing this on his customs as well, and Sergey has been doing it recently on his full customs as well. So it's really nice, non-obtrusive, keeps the blade very clean. You can see here that this knife is devoid of any markings of the maker. They're actually located on the handle here, which I'll show later. But going on and moving on to the handle, you can see this very futuristic theme going on here. Again, inspired by the design that was used on the Rockstead collaboration, with Dmitry, the Shun. You can see here that the pivot is darkened blue. The chamfers on the pivot, however, are polished, and you can kind of see that really nice strong blue anodization showing through here when you take a look at the pivot from different angles. Honestly, I wasn't really a fan of this darkened color when I first saw pictures of the knife. I think it's a little bit better in person, but I really think some strong vivid blues like what you see on the kickstop would have been really nice. And I'm a little bit disappointed that that wasn't there, especially because, you know, you have these really nice blues popping up at you on the backs, the backspacer clip area, which we'll talk about later. And I really think that would have matched well with the pivot area, but I do understand this is probably a little bit more wear resistant as well. Now, talking about the handle design here, this is a two-dimensional handle for the most part. You can see here though that there are 4 levels of milling. The stepped milling here kind of reminds me of like sandstone. But this does add a good amount of grip to the knife when holding it. And while I wouldn't say that it is on the same level as a contoured knife, such as, I would say, you know, this neon here that has 3D contouring, it definitely does have a really nice feel in the hand that is absolutely much more interesting than, you know, having flat 2D handles. So I really appreciate that. And I think it was a good design choice in the end. You can see here that it catches the light in certain ways that a 3D milled handle would not. And again, the futuristic theme is very Dmitry, and I think they did a really good job executing the design here. I really love how these lines are, you know, what's the word? They're not quite organic looking, but they're random in a way that I think you can really tell that Dmitry definitely spent a lot of time trying to play around with these angles to make the knife look as best as he could. And I really love how this middle lineup here wraps around the pivot as well, instead of kind of just intersecting through it. I think that's a really nice touch. So moving back here to this clip lanyard hole backspacer combination here. The first thing I want to say about this is it's ambidextrous. And what this means is it allows you to kind of flip this entire assembly over 180 degrees so you have the clip on the left side. Now, the only thing I would say I would, you know, kind of note about this is a lot of the times I'll take the clip off of knives, and you know, when you're removing the knife out of your pocket, the clip will spring back on and will leave a mark here. I'm assuming if you flip it over and you're using the knife with the clip on the left side for any appreciable amount of time, you'll probably see that marring happen on this side as well. Of course, if you intend to leave the clip on, not really too big of an issue, but if you're flipping it back and forth, that might be something that might bother you. So I guess something to be aware of if you're going to be flipping the clip around constantly. Now, I will note that the clip is very well designed on the right-hand side, and as you can see here, how it rests on the handle, it rests on a very thin part. There's very little contact of this clip on the actual handle, and it's kind of hard to capture here on camera, but as you can see, if I was to take it off on this side, there probably would be very little marring visible, if at all. Again, this is something that I'm just theorizing about right now. I can't 100% confirm, since even though I'm left-handed, I do carry my knives in my right pocket, since most knives are right-handed. So I'm probably going to keep it like this, but something that I've noticed, and I definitely think that this design is intentional, just how much contact is on the handle, which is really nice. The clip itself is very wide compared to other knives, and personally, I love it. I love how deep you can get this knife into your pocket. The retention is excellent. There's just the right amount of springiness, and there's been a couple of disappointments recently. The RJ Martin comes to mind with its recessed clip area here. Definitely no problems with this one. Very excellent. This angle has a good amount of contact for retention in your pocket, and this ramp is excellently done. So bravo on the clip. No problems there at all. Overall though, what do I think about this design? I think it's excellent. I know a lot of people really wanted a full-length backspacer. Personally myself, I don't really mind too much. I like the F95 standoff. I think obviously this is much cooler, and it really shows Dmitry thinking outside the box with this, you know, the singular piece that just does so much work. Of course, you know, what you see on like the F95 or the Neon or or Hottie or something like that, the backspacer does function as a lanyard loop, but just having such a small piece do so much work in such a small area is really impressive. And definitely it takes a lot of machining work as well. You know, these handles are not thick by any means, and so being able to drill and tap threads into these handles precisely is definitely a feat in and of itself as well. And again, I really love how vivid the blues are on the handle screws. It really reminds me of the Sapphire Blue 110 kickstop. And again, I really wish this color carried over to the pivot more, but it's really nice to see these accents here on these screws, which again are done in that Sinkevich tri-lobe proprietary pivot or proprietary screw pattern that I love so much. Really love how the this whole backspacer clip assembly is also recessed into the handles. It looks like it protrudes out, which it does, but it's definitely nothing obtrusive. It's not really anything you can feel it, but it definitely wouldn't bother you when you have the knife in your hand as well. Lastly, moving on to the lock side, not too much to see here. The handle pattern is continued. We talked about the clip. One thing I do like is how this intersection for the lock bar insert, you know, it kind of goes here on this angular point. I don't know, just some interesting highlight here. And I love how it kind of like curves around here, kind of similar to the pivot area here. And again, the screws are excellently finished. You can see how shiny that lock bar insert screw is. Now, taking a look at the top of the spine of the handle, you can see here we have this depression or a chamfering here that you see on Sergei's designs as well. It just allows you to get your finger in for a deeper flip, which is actually important. We'll talk about that later. Conversely, on the other side, we have this chamfering here as well, so you can get your hands in to disengage the lock. Now, one thing that I think this is for many other knives besides Shirogorov, but one thing I do like about Sergei's designs is that he'll have this like asymmetrical milling or kind of profiling here on the lock bar area. As you can see here, the show side dips lower than the lock side, which the lock side then has a chamfer here, so you can really get your hands in there to disengage the lock. Now, what Dmitry decided to do was just have a chamfer on both sides of the handles, which, you know, works pretty well. The lock bar tension on this knife is nowhere near as strong as, say, the recent RJ Martin. I feel like I'm shit-talking the knife a lot, but again, it just wasn't in my taste compared to a lot of other recent collaborations. But you can see here that it would have been nice to have some kind of profiling here like Sergei does on his designs, but I understand, you know, this knife is very symmetrical, and Dmitry probably wanted the same on both of his, on both of the handles. Nothing new here, but just something to note. The internal milling on this knife is excellent. You can see it's very complex diagonal crosshatch milling here, very deep, and contributes to the lightweight of the knife. You can see even here that the lock bar is skeletonized as well. And you'll see here that there is a Torx screw. Now, historically, Dmitry would use this tri-lobe pivot screw or pivot driver bit on his pivots only, and kind of leave the screws on the back being hex. I believe the Vegas Cards Mini Cannabis was like that. But now you can see a lot of Dmitry's customs will use the tri-lobe screws everywhere, except on the internal hardware. And this knife is no different. You can see here that this has a Torx for the lock bar insert. Now, moving on to the overall ergonomics and action. So a lot of people were really concerned about this small flipper tab, and I was as well. Personally, I think that it would have been better if the flipper tab was larger. However, for me, it's not a deal breaker. The knife flips very well and has that signature Sinkevich action. That's due to the different arrangement on the MRBS compared to Sergei. I personally think it's superior, much more drop shut, and it flies out just as fast. But anyways, going back to that flipper tab, how do I explain this? The test for my knife, me being a left-handed person, is, can I flip the knife with my right hand? With Sergei's designs, no problem. Flipper tab is very nice, easy to access. The alignment above the pivot means that I can preload it a good amount and it'll fly out, and I can just flick it back and it'll fly out, and I can do it with my right hand. This knife, I can't do it with my right hand. So I wouldn't say it's a super easy to flip knife, something that's super intuitive to pick up. And for me, I would describe the action as, if anyone has owned the Sigma, I would say, or Pero. I don't think it's as bad as the Pero. The Pero, the flipper tab was very far forward. You could preload it a lot, but you really had to get the angles right. This one, the flipper tab placement is ideal. The flipper tab itself is very low profile, and it's not sharp like the Sigma, but you really have to get kind of this, you gotta sweep it back while pushing in at an angle. So once you get it right, it's very, very easy, very low effort. This knife isn't going to, mess up your finger, maybe the first day or so while you're getting used to it, but once you get used to it, you can get this thing to fly with very little force. However, I can't do it with my right hand at all. Like, it's really hard, it hurts. And so I think that for most people, they'll be able to get it. However, I do expect that there will be people who won't be able to get it, or they will be able to flip it, but it just is taking too much effort for them. Again, like many other frame locks, do not have your any fingers on the lock bar. That's really going to mess it up. Me as a left-handed person, it's actually easy to not touch the lock bar, so that's kind of nice. But yeah, I think that a lot of people are not going to like the flipping action because they won't be able to do it, or they will be able to do it and it'll be too hard. And it's really disappointing because there are so many really nice things about this knife: the combination of materials, the finishing, the innovation here with this backspacer area, and the size is amazing for most people, but this flipper tab really kills it. And I'm not really sure why they couldn't have just made it a little bit bigger, since, on the Sigma and the Pero, it was kind of nice how the flipper tab hid away in the knife. But as you can see here, the flipper tab is visible when it's open. And so, if they just made it a little bit bigger, I don't think it would have ruined the, aesthetics of the knife, but I feel like it would have made it a lot easier to flip. There's a lot of times when my hands will be really dry or something, and I can't get really good grasp on the jimping, which is excellent, by the way. I feel like this is the kind of the saving grace of the flipper tab, just how excellent the jimping is. I can kind of have some difficulty getting it to go, but under both circumstances, 95% of the time, really no problems, and the action is excellent. You can see here that Sinkevich MRBS is just a joy to fidget with. But overall, again, I think I already talked about this. The size is excellent, the material's excellent. The S110V, I think, is going up to 64 Rockwell hardness, which is insane, according to Shirogorov's site. Compare that to their S90V, which I think they're doing at around like 58 or 59. S90V isn't the toughest steel, and so I believe that's why they had it such a low hardness. But 64 Rockwell for S110V, excellent edge retention, and my F7 S125 has excellent edge retention as well. So overall, really excellent materials, and I think a lot of people have been waiting for a titanium collaboration to happen with Dmitry. The Pero and the Sigma just weren't as popular. I think the Sigma was a pretty plain knife. The design is very very out there, which is good, and the weight, the sub 3 ounces, was amazing. But some people just really wanted that titanium frame lock, and I think Shirogorov and Dmitry and Sinkevich really delivered here with something that is attractive. The price point too, being $1,500, is nothing too out there compared to other collaborations, which is excellent. And again, a lot of people will really like this knife, except the ones who can't flip it. I do encourage you guys to really stick with it, and once you get that flip off and you're able to reliably open the knife, I think those people will then enjoy it too. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review. This one ran over a lot, but there's a lot of stuff going on with this knife. When I was taking a look at it, besides the grind and the interesting handle and of course the backspacer clip lanyard hole, I didn't think there was really too much to talk about. But when I got the knife and saw just how many really cool things were going on, I had to write it down and explain to you all these cool things I saw. Oh, last thing. Important. If you watched all the way throughout this video, you probably are interested in keeping this knife for a long time. Does the Sinkevich pen work on it? The obvious answer is yes, but there are a few caveats. Now, if you take a look at the pen, the Sinkevich pen, comparing that to the Shirogorov driver or pen, let me get a Shirogorov bit. The Shirogorov bits fit very well in the driver, and the driver part of it really extends up past the driver here. Oh, wow, that's not good. As you can see here, the driver extends significantly past here. That's nice, that's good. However, on the Sinkevich pen, you can see here that the driver, while there's a very good portion of the bit exposed, it's kind of recessed in here, and these edges on the pen are incredibly sharp. This is very well machined titanium. Now the problem then is, let me flip it to the small side. When you're going ahead and putting this knife or the driver in, there's really so much you can get for the engagement before you're gonna start getting that sharp edge hitting the backspacer here. Now this isn't anodized or anything, so it probably won't damage it too much, but that was something I noticed. I couldn't get full engagement on the bit with the Sinkevich pen. Now fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on if you have the correct tools, the Sinkevich bit does fit in the Shirogorov pen or driver tool, and as you can see here, it kind of extends halfway past. So you can actually get the full engagement on the driver bit with the Shirogorov pen or driver tool. Let me go ahead here and show you the clearance. It was obviously designed with the bit in mind, taking a look at the chamfers on the backspacer, but you have very little room to work with here. This is full engagement on the bit. And so that's something I just want to let you guys know about, so you don't go ahead and scratch up your knife. Is it kind of disappointing? I think so, yes. Not everybody has, both a Sinkevich pen and a Shirogorov tool. But I think that, if you're going to, buy this knife and intend to carry it for a long time, you're probably going to get this pen, or not. This pen is $300. But you will want this bit so you can, take apart your knife and clean it. I think that's very important. Do I wish that they include the bit with the pen, or the bit, or the, I don't think they include the entire pen, but do I wish they include the bit with the knife? Yeah, I wish they would, but that's just the way it is. And Dmitry's been using these bits for a long time. In fact, I have a driver here that came with the original cannabis. There was only one size for the pivot because, of course, the older knives, like the original cannabis, were using just the Torxes on the back, but now we have the full Sinkevich tri-lobe screw setups going on. Just something to note. And again, I don't want anybody messing up their knives, so I hope that anybody who is intending to carry the knife, open it up and clean it, are just aware of that, to not use the Sinkevich pen as a driver, at least for this knife, on the back of the backspacer screws. For the pivot, it's totally fine. The bit will get that proper engagement even if you're using the pen. So just something to note. Anyways, that's it. I've talked for way too long. This video is approaching 30 minutes, and it'll probably take a long time to upload to YouTube as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful, and see you guys again next time.